we live in an oversexed world.
How does one remain in the mindset or in the essence of celibacy?
Number one, don't give up what you want most for what feels good now. And number two, don't listen to your loudest desire. Listen to your deepest desire.
It's almost taboo to be celibate almost nowadays. It's like, what? If you went out and celebrated that, you're basically committing social suicide.
People think the exact opposite, that the more intimate my relationship is, the closer I become. But what you're saying is actually a restraint creates another level, another plane of intimacy.
I think that there needs to be community that can bring about that glorification of the purity and how purity is so necessary.
Before we jump into this episode, I'd love to invite you to join this candid spiritual community to hear more conversations that will help you become happier, healthier, and more healed. All I want you to do is click on that subscribe button because I love your support. I love seeing all the comments pouring through, all the love pouring through, and we're just getting started. I can't wait to go on this journey with you, whether you're a spiritual seeker or you're just curious about the topic. And we really hope that our conversations will provide you food for thought and inspiration for your own spiritual journey. So join us for honest, candid discussions about spirituality for soul's sake.
For soul's sake, for soul's sake.
Welcome back to For Soul's Sake, a podcast in which we talk all things spiritual. And again, we're back by popular demand with the one, the only Keshava Swami. Thank you so much for being here, Maharaj.
Yeah, great to be back. It was a joy last time. I think some good points came out. So let's see what happens today.
Yeah, we had some really good feedback from people.
Yeah, I think people are they just love the depth, the type of conversation. I think just hearing from a lot of experience, I think you've had, Maharaj, as well.
You make us look good. And a lot of people were curious about monk lifestyle and monk mindset. It's very popular and buzzwordy almost nowadays. Yeah. You were a monk.
I was, yeah.
5 years.
I was for 5 years with Maharaj. Took me under his wing.
Yeah, it was a good monk. He did
it was
well.
a good monk.
I think about 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take 80%.
So we've chosen a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which allows us to delve into some monk life hacks, which will give us insight into things that we can practice, that we can be conscious of, that will help to elevate our lives towards happiness, towards goodness, towards a connection with the Supreme. We've chosen a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. It's our favorite book, of course, chapter 14, text number 16. Here comes the translation. The result of pious action is pure and is said to be in the mode of goodness. But action done in the mode of passion results in misery. And hear this, action performed in the mode of ignorance results in foolishness. So it looks like we've got to be in the mode of goodness. Monk mindset and monk lifestyle is all about being in the mode of goodness. And when I think about monks, I think, okay, stereotypically, we all think about Buddhist monks in Nepal, or what's it like being a monk in London? What do you do? What's your day look like?
It's such a foreign concept, right?
Yeah.
Monk is such a foreign thing.
By the way, to be completely honest, I know what he does, but I'm trying to bring a conversation.
Bring the suspense.
Yeah. So what does the day look like? Typical
Well,
day?
it's interesting. I started my monk journey actually in India.
Oh, right.
And I spent 6 months primarily in Mumbai, but then we kind of traveled around. That was back in 2002. But yeah, then very quickly after that, I came back to London. And it's interesting, I came back because I wanted to live as what I call an engaged monk. And that means as monks, we have these kind of two aspects to our personality. There's like one aspect where we're really going in and really trying to work on ourselves. But then it's beautiful because then we then engage and come out with the world. We go to universities, corporate firms, governmental organizations, podcast studios, and we engage with the world. And it's almost like breathing in and then breathing out. It's like the rhythm of life. So I wanted to be an engaged monk. So being in London is challenging, but it's full of opportunity as well. And the day starts very early, usually by about 3 a.m.
Wow.
And yeah, people kind of feel that that's a pretty intense thing to do, to wake
Wait,
up
that
at
just
3
registered
o'clock.
3 a.m.
Yeah.
That's like scandalously early. Mangalarti is at 4:30.
Yeah, yeah.
So an hour and a half earlier than you need to be up by temple standards.
Yeah, the first service of the day is at 4:30, but I like to get an hour in before even that,
Wow.
because I find that in that hour in the day, the clarity is incredible.
Really?
And I mean, I just like all our viewers out there, just try it, you know, maybe not 3 a.m.,
Yeah.
but 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and just try it and sustain it for like a couple of weeks or even a month if you can. And I guarantee you it's an absolute game changer. So yeah, even when I kind of get back a little late, I'm always up because those morning hours are just golden. So yeah, usually begin by about 3 o'clock. Half an hour it usually takes me to get ready, and then 3:30 to 4:30 I do my study and a bit of reflection, and then we go into the first service of the day at 4:30, and then between 5 and 7 we do japa. We chant the mantra, but we do it on the beads, and it's really that's a whole practice we can talk about separately. But then and then at 7 we do a bit more singing, and then we all come together in the monastery between 7:30 and 8:30, and one of the monks or the ladies, they'll read a verse from the scripture and then just give a bit of a commentary and a perspective, and then we'll have a discussion, and then it's breakfast. It's amazing how much you've done before
Yeah.
breakfast.
It's like a whole day before breakfast.
Yeah,
a whole
yeah.
day before your day starts.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest here, and vulnerably so. I've never been a morning person. And I struggle, even just to kind of be awake, alert, and conscious at that time. Benefits, it seems like this is our first life hack, rising early. And everyone's talking about it, the 5 a.m. club, and, you know, every coach is insinuating and propagating waking up early. God knows if they actually do it. Give us some real reasons why rising early. What's mentioned in the scripture? Why should we do it? Convince me. Like, why should I wake up early tomorrow? Give me some ideas.
I can maybe give I obviously lived with Keshava Swami, so I was getting up early.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've also left that lifestyle, but then continued my spiritual practice, you know, in the secular world. And one thing really interesting was when you do that enough, you build a certain impression, a certain habit forms. And so when you're not doing that, alarm bells start to go off in my head. Like, something's wrong. I felt this for the first time. I left the wooden floors of the ashram for like my comfy bed. I actually felt so wrong sleeping in a comfy bed that I just started sleeping on the floor again. Next to I kid you not. I started sleeping on the floor again because I just felt something's out of sync here. This is not correct. And I got my first job, and for a good 3 months, I was getting up super early, going to the temple, getting up at about 4:30, going to the temple, chanting, doing my meditation, and then I took the tube to work. And by the time I got to work, I was ready. I was I just felt internally ready for whatever may come. And as time's gone on, that morning is not so early anymore. Starts to creep in. Late nights are the culprit for me. I have late nights, my work pushes me, and then it's like I need to get a certain amount of rest, otherwise I can't function. And I've seen the stark difference. I'm just not as sharp. I'm just not as clear. I'm just not as ready. I'm not as regulated. And all those things I feel, at least just on a health perspective, let's put aside spiritual topics, just from a health perspective, I feel it's critical for my mental health. That's what I found, and I've seen both sides. And I don't know, Maharaj, from your perspective, like getting up early, everyone says it at the moment because of business success and productivity
Get
and
ahead
all
of the
those
day.
things. But for our internal state, what's the benefit? What's the principle behind that?
Nowadays I think we live with so many identities. We have a work identity. We have an identity in our social circle. We have an Instagram identity. We have a Twitter identity. We have an identity for Sunday. And then we have an identity for Monday. And it's amazing. We play all these roles. And for me, the most beautiful thing about waking up in the morning early before the world is moving is that what you can do is connect with your deepest identity, your first identity, your eternal identity, the identity which is underpinning every other role that you're playing in the world. And that for me is the most profound thing about the morning, is that in those moments you remember, who am I, where am I, and what am I? And I just find I just enter life with so much more intention. Whereas if you kind of wake up, running out of the door with a piece of toast in your mouth, trying to catch the train so you don't get, how much can you even relish and experience life? Because you haven't connected before you've even. So that for me, connect with your first identity.
That's the principle.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm speaking on behalf of all parents out there and all people who are feeling this but not sure if you're going to live it. What I've done in my life is I won't physically be able to rise at 5 a.m. because unless the kids jump on my bed and I have to physically get up.
You're waking up at 2 a.m. because your son's jumping on you.
It's ridiculous sometimes. But what I have done is this principle of creating a solitude moment for connecting with the self, I think is essential. And what I've done is I've just carved out 1 hour in the day. And that 1 hour is when my wife goes and drops the kids to school. So she leaves the home at 8 a.m. And I have the luxury that I don't have to go to an office. I get it. But the principle should remain that if it's 4 a.m. for you, if it's 5 a.m. for you, if it's 6 a.m., but ideally sometime in the morning, create time for you and God.
Yeah.
For the real you and God. Because ultimately, as Mother Teresa says, it was always between you and your God anyway. It was always between you and your God. And so the principle is very strong. But, okay, again, let's go back. I'm trying to convince myself that it's okay to wake up whenever I want. But does Krishna say anything about rising early? In the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, are there any verses that kind of pop out for you, or any instances in which God basically says, yeah, I like people who wake up early?
Well, I mean, the verse you read today is very interesting because Krishna explains that there are three qualities. There's goodness, there's passion, and there's ignorance. And the Bhagavatam actually explains that the first 8 hours of the day, between almost like midnight and 8 a.m., are the goodness hours. And then the Bhagavatam says that between 8 and 4, those are the hours of passion. And the hours between 4 and midnight are the hours of ignorance. And it makes complete sense, because the middle hours of the day are when you get things done. That's
Right.
when everything's moving. The last hours of the day are when you're unwinding and you're kind of recuperating and resting and almost preparing for the next day again. And that means that the first 8 hours of the day are for the deep work. And, it's like when you go into a river and you're kind of swimming with the current, or to use a more contemporary example, when you're at an airport and you got a really long corridor to walk down, and they got that, you walk along that thing,
The runway is heaven.
It's so great, isn't it? Because you're almost just like walking, but you feel like you're going double pace. Because what you've done is you've aligned yourself with the current.
Wow.
And so if you use the right hours of the day for the right things, then you'll just be so much more productive. And anyone will tell you that. Like, I study 1 hour in the day, in the morning. It's worth 3 hours of study done at another time.
Yeah.
Because you're aligning yourselves with the energies of the material universe. You know?
There's such an interesting contrast. You said the morning is for deep work. The afternoons are for
Active work.
and then you have sort of relaxation, unwinding.
Yeah.
If we look at the modern world, it's get stuff done in the morning, get stuff done in the afternoon, get stuff done in the evening. There is no time for this, deep inner work and, time to unwind and really compartmentalizing those aspects of our day. But you can, through spiritual wisdom, you can optimize your day for different activities, right?
Yeah.
The only way that I've found that it really convinces people is by taking people on retreat.
Right.
And we've kind of toyed with this model quite a lot. When we did the first retreat in Norfolk, I think it was, we got people to rise at 5 a.m. And the first day, everyone was up and ready. The second day, half the troop showed up. And by the end, I had like 5 people in the room. And we then shifted it a little bit. But we kept those mornings. You've been on retreats, and you're part of the retreats team regularly.
Yeah.
You've seen that the mornings are kept for that absorbed, concentrated, deep work. The afternoons are for active work, and the evenings are for entertainment and spiritual culture. And I would suggest anyone that's watching this and going, I don't know, I can't do this, like, go on a retreat.
Yeah.
Go on a retreat, a bhakti retreat. There's many that Maharaj is doing, that we're doing. Come and join us and experience what it feels like to live that lifestyle for 7 days or 10 days. And then just tell us, where do you sit with it? I'm going to take a segue, by the way, now.
Yeah.
Monk lifestyle, celibacy.
The elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room. How important is it? And what tips do you suggest? 1, is it important? 2, how important? And 3, Maharaj, how does one remain in the mindset or in the essence of celibacy?
Before I get to celibacy, 2 things I always say to people, which I really believe are the keys to life. Number 1, don't give up what you want most for what feels good now. And number 2, don't listen to your loudest desire. Listen to your deepest desire. The essence of both of these statements is that when we're able to restrain ourselves from the immediate passions and pursue something which is so much more meaningful, so much more deep, so much more rewarding to us, that is the key to a beautiful life.
Yeah.
And so now kind of connecting that back to celibacy. The first thing is, I would say there's nothing in the Bhagavad Gita which says that the attraction that a man and a woman have between each other, that's necessarily bad. But it can become bad. We live in an oversexed world, and we live in a world where that attraction, that chemistry, that, immediate pulling towards each other becomes the be-all and the end-all of life, and it's what everyone is looking for. And what happens is that then distracts us from deeper things that we're looking for. And so the idea of celibacy is that when we spend some time of our life in Eastern spiritual culture, everyone spent a period of their life in complete celibacy. And the idea behind that is that when we experience that restraint, that control over our mind and senses, then what happens is we can actually come back into the world and actually have deep relationships with people, because it's not just based on the physical. And so the idea of celibacy, of course, I'm a monk and I've accepted perpetual celibacy, and we can talk about that. But just the principle of everyone embracing some sense of sexual restraint in their life, it's interesting because it will actually help them to connect more deeply with the opposite gender.
Yeah. It's so interesting you say that, Marge, because people think the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Right.
That the more intimate my relationship is, the closer I become.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is actually a restraint creates another level, another plane of intimacy between two people, right?
Yeah. We connect with people obviously on a physical level. We connect with people obviously on an emotional level. And as spiritualists, we're not saying that those things aren't important.
Yeah.
But what we're saying is that they're not the be-all and end-all. And in fact, there's a much deeper level, a spiritual level, which you can connect with someone on.
Yeah.
But if you're completely enamored by the physical and the emotional, then you may never access that level of connection. And therefore your relationship may not get as deep as you'd like it to be.
For someone watching this that's intrigued by this, when you said some level of, I think that pornography and the over-sexualization of modern culture is unavoidable almost. I'm actually scared for my children to get a phone because I know that the exploration of sex is going to be obviously very accessible on that device. Like, it's almost like even if you're innocently scrolling on a website that for information about your homework. I remember as a kid, I was just Googling something or the other, and you'd see images that were completely over-sexualized. What tips from a monk mindset and from how you live would you advise or share with us in controlling isn't the word, I think is control the right word?
To control the senses.
Yeah.
To control.
Manage the senses.
Manage, I think is better.
Yeah. Yeah, we live in a world where we're bombarded by so many images, so many agitations. I think, I think the first step in exploiting anything is to depersonalize it. For example, why do we exploit the environment? Because the first thing we've done is we've depersonalized the environment. We've de-divinitized it, if that's a word. We've basically taken the personality out of it, and therefore now we just see it as an object.
Yeah.
And then then if you see something as an object, then you objectify it and you exploit it. Therefore, I think the first thing that we need to try to inculcate within everyone is a respect for all living entities, that they're not an object of enjoyment, they're spiritual beings, they are divine, and they're worthy of being served. And everyone is not just a object of my enjoyment. And we need to kind of reintroduce that vision, I think, which is not easy, but I would say that's the first step.
Personalize them.
Yeah, they're a person. And then the second thing is purity is such a beautiful thing. It's such a hard thing, but it's such a beautiful thing, and we all appreciate it. Like in the world, pure gold, pure silk. That used to be a clubbing night, actually. Pure orange juice or whatever it may be. Like, we understand the value of purity.
Yeah.
And I think each one of us, as we embrace purity in our life, it's such a rewarding thing. It's there's a Vedic aphorism that says, more satisfying than fulfilling thousands of desires is to conquer one of them.
Wow.
More satisfying than fulfilling thousands of material desires is if you can conquer one of them.
That's profound.
And so it's very beautiful. In our tradition, we have the Goswamis. And this word Goswami literally means one who has mastered the mind and senses. So that's the most ambitious and heroic thing that anyone can do in their life. Like sometimes people see spiritual people and they're like, these guys have no ambition. You know, like you lose your ambition when you become spiritual.
Right.
But the amazing thing is that spiritual people are the most ambitious because they're on a mission to conquer their own mind and senses.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful.
I love that. Personalize and value purity.
Yeah.
Something that's really helped me is having a friendship group in which I can talk about it
Yeah.
and be honest about it. So on Monday nights, there's a group of lads similar, well, they're actually younger to me, but it's a group that I try to mentor and look after as best I can. And we're really honest about it.
Yeah.
Like we just open up about our struggles and give space. I think that because it's almost taboo to be celibate almost nowadays, it's like, what? If you went out and celebrated that, people would, you're basically committing social suicide, isn't it? Well, am I right on that?
You're considered a bit weird.
Let's be honest.
No offense, Maharaj.
Yeah. And so I think that there needs to be community that
Yeah.
can bring about that glorification of the purity and how purity is so necessary.
Yeah, I'm so glad you raised that point. In the Bhagavatam, it's mentioned that society rests on 4 pillars: austerity, mercy, compassion, and truthfulness. And according to cosmic time, the Bhagavatam tells us in every age, one of these pillars successively gets kind of annihilated. And so now we're in kind of the 4th cosmic age, Kali Yuga, and it's said that society is just resting on one pillar. And interestingly, the pillar it says that we're resting on is truthfulness. And I remember reading that for the first time. I was kind of like, society is resting for truthfulness? Do you trust the politicians?
Yeah.
Do you trust the media? Do you trust other people? Like, in what sense is society resting on truthfulness?
Yeah.
But what occurred to me is that one of the answers could be that although everything else in our life might have been attacked, if we're truthful, if we're honest, if we're able to actually just be straightforward and be vulnerable, everything else can actually be re-established from that truthfulness. And so we often say there's purity is possible with honesty. Yeah.
People value honesty about this kind of stuff.
I think that's just such a powerful statement.
Yeah.
Purity can be
Possible with
Possible.
honesty.
with honesty. Yeah.
Today, in the morning, we had the good fortune of Radhika Swami speaking at the temple near Hertfordshire. It's called Bhaktivedanta Manor. If you want to visit, you'll probably see Keshava Maharaj there. And this morning, Radhika Swami was speaking, and he said something akin. He said that Krishna, he appreciates the sincere, stumbling devotee more than the accomplished yogi. And I think that all too often we give up purity because we think that it's too hard a goal or too lofty a goal or too far afoot from where I am right now to even strive for. And I think we just need to celebrate progress more. As spiritualists, when we see each other fall, it's easy to laugh and easy to, someone asked a question this morning and the audience laughed, and I felt a little hurt by that, because I felt that as a society, as a community, we should celebrate progress. If someone's striving for purity, we should celebrate that, and we should pat them on the back rather than take the opportunity to annihilate them. And I think my God, anyway, for me, Krishna And my concept of God is someone who will love us regardless of our faults. And so, yeah, I've got faults and I'm not sexually pure, but that doesn't mean I'm not striving for purity. And I think that there's this huge chasm of judgment that we need to, as collective spiritualists, no matter what tradition we come from, we have to overcome that and see celibacy as something to be glorified, to aim for that purity, to appreciate those who are striving for that purity. Some people call it weird, but I think it's weird that we objectify and sexualize everything. I think that's weird. People consider that it's normal. I think that, as Bhakti Tirtha Swami says, I think that's completely insane to consider that, the new normal is discrimination based on the body, sexualization of the body. I think that's insane. So let's create a new normal.
Yeah. And I love your point on embracing imperfection. There's a Christian monk, and he writes a beautiful book, and he titles it "Falling Upwards."
Richard Rohr.
Yeah,
it's a good book.
And it's such a beautiful concept, falling upwards, that maybe the story of our life is we're constantly falling, but if we're able to respond with honesty, with sincerity, if we're able to respond with grace and take the help of others and learn and grow, then in every fall we actually begin to rise. And I think that's such a beautiful concept.
I just wanted to say something as we were speaking about this, and Radhika, you said something, is within the scripture you mentioned it, the Bhagavatam, the postgraduate of bhakti. In the end of the Bhagavatam, it essentially prophesizes what the future is going to be like.
It's getting mystical, people. Glass ball coming out.
It just came out, and this is, I think, this isn't something so mystical anymore. Actually, very factual.
Oh yeah.
And it's also mentioned in something called the Bhavishya Purana, which literally means future facts, which is such an interesting future facts. And it said that men and women in the future would be considered of high status due to their sexual prowess. Not because of their quality, their integrity, their truthfulness, their honesty, their compassion, but some will be considered high status due to the level of sexual prowess.
Sounds so absurd, isn't it?
And the other thing is that a religious or a priestly person will be considered saintly purely due to their garb.
What they're wearing.
Yeah. And how true is that already? Right?
When was this written? Millennia.
Thousands of years ago, yeah. So I just, as you were speaking, Radhika, I was just thinking like, people say to be celibate or to show restraint to your senses is considered weird. But it's actually strength. And to give in to your senses, to be a servant, to be a slave to your senses, it's actually weak.
Yeah.
And that weakness is going to be considered a strength in the future. It's such an interesting paradigm, right?
Intensity.
We've covered 3 different life hacks now. Well, this is the 3rd one. Rise early, wake up. Purity, sexual purity. Now we're talking intensity. What are you thinking, Maharaj?
Well, you talked about dress.
Yours are pretty bright, Maharaj.
It's funny because people ask us why the orange, what does the orange mean? And one representation of the orange is fire. And perhaps there could be no more graphic representation of intensity than fire. And so the monks kind of wear the orange because it reminds them of the need for intensity. And it's interesting because intensity, to some it can sound like insanity. But sometimes I say another way is intensity can also sound like integrity. So sometimes people think intensity is like too much. I don't want to be intense. I don't want to, I want to be like I'll do it nicely, kind of slowly, easily. But I say intensity is close to integrity, because if it actually registers in you what you're trying to achieve, then the integrity means that my actions match my aspirations. And therefore intensity is almost like integrity, because let's face it, here we are, we're sitting in a podcast studio and we're kind of talking lightly in one sense, but what are we actually trying to do? We are actually trying to spiritually perfect our lives and reawaken pure love. And if we're going to think that just by being kind of casual, lukewarm, kind of dabbling a bit here and out, that's going to be the recipe for success, we might feel a little let down. And so the guy in orange here with burning robes, I guess, is here to say that maybe intensity is not just for the monks, but for everyone.
Yeah.
I'm like a moth to the flame.
But I don't know, how does that sound to you? What does intensity make you guys feel like?
Well, when I first heard the word intensity, it's scary. Intensity can initially mean pain, rigorousness, sacrifice. These words have a very interesting connotation to them. But through my experience of spiritual intensity, actually I found that it results in extreme joy. And just like, a flower or a fruit, if you really want to taste the real juice, you have to squeeze it. You have to squeeze it so hard that the juice comes out. And when you taste that juice, but it required an intense process, right? Someone actually said to me, one monk in India, when I was first sort of training to be a monk, they said to me, yeah, life is intense. It is intense. But it's just like a fruit. You're being smashed around, you're being squeezed, you're being stretched, you're being cut into pieces, only for all of that fragrance and flavor to come out and for people to receive that. And I thought that was a beautiful example. And as a result, the pain of intensity of sacrificing time for others and not just for my own desires became a lot worth it, because I saw actually there's joy in the chaos, as it were.
And your spiritual teacher and my spiritual teacher, Satchidananda Swami, he tells us that famous quote, the pain of discipline is uncomfortable, but the pain of regret is unbearable.
Yeah. My spiritual teacher really only gets interested in, he loves me and I love him, but I think he really gets interested when I talk about intensity of my depth of loving relationship with God.
Yeah.
He gets really interested in that. He values that. And not that I value it yet, but I love the person that told me to value it more. And the small amount of experiences that I've had with intense practicing, for example, once a year I try and do a 64 rounds day, where I take my bead bag, my japa mala, and I try to do it in Vrindavan, and we mold our retreats around it. So when we have our 10-day trip to Vrindavan, there's a break day and everyone else goes shopping, or maybe they also chant their 64 rounds. But I try and make it a point that no matter where I'm at, I go, and that's my time for me and Krishna in the year. And that experience of chanting that many rounds, the first 16 rounds, I can only say it's like getting the mind in check. The first, and by the way, for those of you that are like, what the hell is he on about rounds? Not beers, not beer rounds. Rounds means you get a mala which has got 108 beads on it, and you chant a 1 mantra per bead, and once you've completed 108, that's 1 round. So the first 16 rounds of my mala, I'm just trying to get my mind in check. The next 16 rounds, I can only describe it as being like the mind is finally like a tame dog. It's now, okay, it's relaxed, it understands it's in that flow. But not much else is happening. You feel kind of less restlessness, less, not completely still, but less so. And then slowly, the experience I had was that as I get to 48 and then I start losing track of the numbers. And that absorbed state of consciousness is because I've spent a quantity of time, a quality of time with God. And then I start to feel things internally that I never feel otherwise for God. I start to like Krishna. I start to feel a lightness in my mind and a lightness in my soul. And I guess whatever intensity is akin for you, schedule 1 day in a month, 1 day in a year, heck, 1 day in 2 years, but just 1 day where you've committed fully to reading intensely or chanting intensely, or I think serving intensely is not what we're talking about here, right? But we're talking about kind of more solitude, more intensity of and a solitude connection. I could be getting it wrong. Maybe you tell me more.
No, I think you're spot on. And, well, to be maybe a little provocative here.
Let's go.
I think we live in times where everyone wants to kind of do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
We're kind of like spiritual window shoppers. Yeah, and I don't mean that, like, here's
true.
the monk, holier than thou, and now I'm going to kind of look down on everyone. But I think we can all relate to that. And it's interesting, even within monastic life, you can almost become like a spiritual window shopper as well.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of tend to say, like, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'll do that on a Friday, and I'll do that,
Yeah.
And I think while that's beautiful, and every journey starts with a step, I think at one point, if we really want to have a deep spiritual experience, if we want to have some kind of awakening, if we want to actually experience something beyond this world, it's going to require a special effort.
Concentration,
Yeah.
I sometimes think, like, you can keep putting food in the mouth, but then at one point you have to close your mouth and you have to chew.
Yeah.
And you have to chew it again and again and again. I don't know how many times they say you need to chew something 20 times or something to really get the... And I feel now sometimes a lot of spirituality is just like taking a bit here, putting a bit there, putting a bit there, putting a bit there. But where's that closing your mouth and saying, like, now I'm going to work with this and let's really try and go deep?
It's interesting, Marge, you say that, because you often hear people who, take a bit here, take a bit there, then come to the conclusion very quickly, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Not really promising what it said.
There's an analogy, right? That I heard this first from one of my friends in New York, Dayal Goranga. He said, it's like taking a shovel, giving someone a shovel and saying, you dig here, and at the end you'll reach water. And so you start digging and you feel the wall starting to get damp. The completely illogical and, mind my language, stupid thing to do is to pick up the shovel and go and start digging somewhere else. If the same water runs underneath, and I don't know, this might be provocative to say, but you can reach the water in any spiritual tradition if you dig for long enough. Any bona fide spiritual tradition that propagates love of God and love of humanity and peace, etc., can be achieved if you keep digging in the same place. So take a shovel and start digging. But what you're saying, Maharaj, I completely concur with that when the walls start to get damp around you, don't jump out the hole and go to the next one. Keep digging. The water's close.
Well, to quote Bruce Lee,
One of my favorites.
He's gonna
He's
get.
gonna be.
You know, I had this album. This I don't know if you remember, Maraj. I had this video album on my laptop in the ashram,
Oh,
and it was
yeah,
like
yeah.
inspiration.
The
And I had,
mind,
like,
the mind.
yeah, I had videos of like Bruce Lee and like all these random inspirational videos, and then, but yeah, Bruce Lee was definitely up there.
If you don't know this quote, you're not a real fan, huh?
I'll know it.
Okay.
I don't fear the man who knows 1,000 kicks. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 1,000 times.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Mm.
I'll just share another intensity story with you.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because like we're monks, so like we like to hear about monks. So there's a Christian monastery, and when people join as monks, then what they do is they kind of, sign into their monastery, hand over all their possessions, and then they get shown into their room. And it's said that they enter their room, this is like on your first day as a monk,
Mm.
and all there is in the room is a bed and like 5 books, Christian books. And what happens is every single day, you don't go out of the room. Every single day, there's that, like the prison cell type of thing, you get your meal through the door. And what happens in this monastery is that everyone has to stay in the room. They have to read, they have to meditate, they have to pray. And day after day, they have to actually try to find communion with God.
Wow.
And it's said that only on the day where they have a breakthrough, where they feel that they've actually contacted God, are they allowed to come out and be part of the monastery.
Wow.
And some people it takes a month, some people it takes a year, some people it takes 5 years. But until you've broken through, it's called the breakthrough, you don't come out of the room. Now,
That's a bit intense.
I would love to do that.
Yeah, that is intense. No, we're not suggesting anyone does this, but I thought that concept of breakthrough
Yeah.
is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, we're all here and we get some benefits from being part of the spiritual tradition and everything. But the real thing
Yeah.
is, imagine if you can achieve that communion.
Yeah.
Imagine that we have the opportunity to contact divinity.
Yeah.
Imagine what that would feel like. But it's not cheap.
It took me 15 years of practicing bhakti, Krishna bhakti, to realize I'm not here for social validation. It took me 15 years to realize that I'm not doing this because I'm trying to please others. It took me 15 years to realize that I'm practicing this to reach God. And I think no matter what spiritual practice, if you're stuck around for this long, that means that you should. I feel like this is a moment that, from my heart to viewers and for all to take as you like, really assess what it is that you're looking for right now in your spiritual practice. Why are you part of that community? Why are you practicing what you're practicing? And if it's not clear yet, then take the opportunity of these words to commit to an intense and absorbed experience of that practice. Because if you're not feeling the walls are damp around you, then are you convinced that this is the path for you? Are you sure? Why are we still doing what we're doing? Anyway, my 2 cents on that. With that, we're going to close off this episode of For Soul's Sake. Today's episode was really cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Monk mindset hacked. What we got? Rising early, spiritual celibacy, sexual purity, and intensity. We'll leave you with it. Wishing you all lots of spiritual strength, and see you on the next episode of For Soul's Sake.
If you love this episode, you'll love my interview with Kat Meffin on how life isn't always symmetrical and beautiful. Check it out.
Nobody else owns you and your feelings. So you get to decide ultimately. And obviously, like I said, we were talking then about like how you feel, but you do get to make that decision.
Yeah.
You get to choose how, even if someone says something really horrible to you, or you read something horrible, or you see something that you compare yourself against, you do get to make that choice, however hard that is. And I think growing up, you know,